Sanji is heading into a growth arc this saga, and there is a good chance it ends with him finally unlocking Conqueror's Haki. Sounds huge, right? But how exactly is Oda going to get him there? We're in a shonen, so obviously we're talking about a fight. And one of you guys already floated an idea in the comments that might genuinely be one of the most interesting theories I've heard. So today we're talking about how Sanji could actually unlock Conqueror's Haki, which means talking about his fight with Killingham, especially now that the whole Zaza nightmare situation seemed to be raining down straight from the parents' side of things. We might be looking at the ultimate nightmare for Sanji. Welcome back to Theory No Mi, and today I want to dig into everything going on with Sanji. Not just how he gets there, but why. Let's get into it. Start with what becoming king actually means in this series, because that's the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about. Some of you call this retcon behavior based on what has been said in the manga. Honestly, I don't see anything here that contradicts what we have already established. One of the first definitions we get for Conqueror's Haki, I think it goes all the way back to pre-time skip, was that only people with the ambition to become king can wield it. And just because Sanji hasn't shown that ambition yet doesn't mean he doesn't have it. It just means he hasn't shown it. That's classic One Piece storytelling, nothing new here. Even the most hardcore Sanji fans I've known raised an eyebrow at this, like how could a guy like Sanji possibly want to be king? But here's the thing, in One Piece, becoming king has never strictly meant ruling over people. Look at Luffy. Luffy doesn't want to command anyone. When someone tries to build him a fleet, he turns it down flat. King in Oda's hands is really just a stand-in for ambition. That's exactly why we're talking about Haki here. It's tied to the same idea. And Luffy's the easiest example to explain because Sanji's own image of king is basically built around watching Luffy. Luffy says constantly he's going to be the king of the pirates, but fairly recent in manga, he clarifies what that actually means to him. Being king of the pirates just means being the freest man in the world. So if your dream is freedom, becoming king means being completely free. Bottom line, becoming king in this story is really just shorthand for having an enormous driving ambition. And that kind of ambition matters in our world too, not just theirs, because dreams are everything in One Piece. Arguably the most important thing in the entire series. And Sanji has a dream he needs to fulfill. Beyond making Luffy king of the pirates, having that level of ambition for Sanji also means chasing his own dream, finding the all blue. Now, there is another angle to the king conversation, specifically for Sanji, because he actually comes from royalty. We've touched on this before too. Sanji literally calls himself a prince, plays with the name prince during the Alabasta arc, which honestly might be one of the biggest foreshadowing moments Oda's ever pulled off. Something he circles back to way later, but it clearly ties to what we're discussing now about Sanji's royal family. For Sanji, becoming a king probably isn't first and foremost about Luffy. It's about his family, because the only king he's actually known personally up close his whole life is his own father, Jaji. So for Sanji, becoming a king might actually mean becoming something a lot like his father, becoming something tied to his own bloodline. And that connects directly to what we're reading in the current chapters. Gaban talks about an insecurity he senses in Sanji, and on one level, sure, Sanji's family spent his entire childhood knocking him down, and every time they got the chance to make him feel worthless, they took it. I think Sanji has already worked through that particular wound, but there is still one piece that he hasn't resolved, something tied to his family that the saga might finally force him to confront, and killing him could be the exact key to it. It's not about being accepted by his family anymore. Sanji left that need a long time ago. It's about becoming like them. Conqueror's Haki in this theory is not just the latest power-up in a string of recent ones for Sanji, and the most recent example directly supports this idea. I'm talking about the classic Vinsmoke exoskeleton Sanji pulls out during his fight with Queen on Onigashima. And the reason that image matters here is because that's literally the moment we watch Sanji physically reassemble himself after getting hit by Queen's strongest attack. So why does this insecurity come from becoming like them? Because think about the first thing Sanji says the moment he gets access to that power. When we're not talking about the exoskeleton, Sanji becomes insanely fast in that form, practically invisible, which ties back to his dream of the all blue. but also connects to something we'll get into in a second involving his old battlesuit. Sanji's real fear is becoming like his siblings, completely without emotions, which is the exact opposite of the character Oda has spent these entire series building. And this isn't a new fear either. Sanji has shown us this before. Gaban is basically pointing at something that's been quietly weighing Sanji down the whole time. And to me, the connection is obvious, especially because we're in a shonen. Ambition matters, chasing your dream matters, sure. But unlocking Conqueror's Haki also means becoming stronger. And early on, I think around Fishman Island, the series ties Conqueror's Haki directly to raw physical strength of whoever is using it. So maybe part of the reason Sanji can't call on this power yet is that some part of him is still scared of getting stronger. For Sanji, getting stronger, like we saw in Onigashima, means might be drifting closer to his family, closer to becoming like his brothers, emotionless. That's exactly why, in that moment, he grabs the transponder snail lodged into his ear and tells Zoro, "If I ever change and become like my brothers, you have to kill me." And Zoro promises he will. We're coming to that promise too, because it might resurface right here in Elbaf. Now that we've laid out all these pieces, let's throw in the last ingredient, arguably the most important one, Killingham. In a shonen, this kind of character growth almost always comes through combat, and we've already got a fight in motion, Killingham versus Sanji. It'll be a physical fight, sure, but we have to factor in Killingham's actual power, materializing dreams, and specifically, we've already seen nightmares. He's already got one active nightmare running, Zaza, which represents his own personal trauma. But it's worth asking what Sanji's version of that would even look like. Could Killingham materialize Sanji's nightmare? My first instinct before I even read the comment that inspired this video was some version of his siblings. Sanji forced into a fight with the entire Vinsmoke family. Maybe not Reiju, we'll see how that gets handled, but definitely Judgy, his father, twisted into nightmare version, maybe even scaled up to a giant size and puppeted by Killingham. If that's the route Oda takes, it would mean Sanji literally confronting what happened with his family, confronting how he actually feels about them. But if we run with everything we just laid out, that Sanji's real fear is in his family, it's becoming his family, then the true nightmare isn't them, it's himself. A giant, monstrous version of himself with full Vinsmoke traits. And Oda may already have given us the design. Remember the red suit we see towards at the end of Wano? That shows up for a brief stretch between Onigashima and then gets destroyed. I remember asking years ago, why would Oda introduce such a massive important power-up for a character, then blow it up one saga later, showing it maybe twice? It's like if Zoro got Emma at the end of the Wano and then destroyed it himself by the end. Obviously, Sanji's connection to it is different, not sentimental exactly, but tied to his identity in a much deeper way. Personally, I think part of the reason the red suit got shelved as merchandising, Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, the big three from the original crew, need to stay visually recognizable, which is exactly why these characters have changed the least design-wise, even with the time skip. But beyond the toy shelf logic, I think Oda was also quietly setting up Sanji's biggest fear the entire time, becoming exactly that, which is why Sanji can now fight at full power without needing his suit at all. So here's what I think Killingham's nightmare actually looks like. The red suit form, something we've already recognized but twisted. Not quite Sanji we've known, basically since the start of the series, maybe even with the signature eyebrow flipped the wrong way. The version Sanji himself is already shown us a glimpse of. Except now it talks, with zero sympathy, and might even put women in danger. Just picture it. Sanji's own nightmare in the monstrous Vinsmoke form, going after Nami or Robin, and Sanji throwing himself in the middle to protect them, fighting his own worst fear head-on. That, to me, is the perfect setup for Sanji to finally unlock Conqueror's Haki, and it could all wrap up with one specific quiet movement involving Zoro. We have talked about this recently. Zoro has clearly shown a real trust in Sanji's strength over the last several chapters, and I love where the relationship sits right now. And remember that moment I mentioned earlier where Sanji asks Zoro to kill him if he ever changes for good. After that conversation in manga, the two of them never bring it up again, not once. There's no scene where Zoro shows up with a sword drawn asking, is that really you or not? A scene like that, right there in the saga, could exactly be what finally puts the whole question to rest for Sanji, especially with Wano's anime adaptation still fresh in everyone's mind. This callback wouldn't feel like a stretch at all. So that's everything I think about how Sanji could finally unlock Conqueror's Haki. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you buy the nightmare version of himself theory, or are you in the team he fights his actual family? Drop your take below, and I'll see you all very soon with more One Piece content. See you next time.